Hello lads, lassies, and those of unspecified gender, it's the Irishman here, and today I'm going to be talking about what would have happened if I was the one writing Dragon Ball GT. Although I really haven't done this in any other what ifs, I'm going to set some ground rules, because this isn't like any other what if. This is a complete and total rewrite for the Dragon Ball GT series, and so we're going to have to actually make sure it doesn't get too out of pocket. The first rule for this story is going to be that we cannot, under any circumstances, use anything from Super, as in the universes, the people, or any sort of forms, such as Ultra Instinct, Ultra Ego, Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Blue, and Gohan Beast, and Orange Piccolo. Piccolo can still get the ultimate form, and Gohan might be able to combine Super Saiyan or any other forms with Ultimate, but he cannot get Beast, and Piccolo cannot get the orange form. Although things that were introduced in Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z or even the games that were confirmed in Super would therefore be allowed, as they were things that did exist in Dragon Ball but were never actually confirmed to be canon until Super, which is still technically a canon source material. Think the final Kamehameha. The first time we actually saw it was in the games, but it was only made canon by Dragon Ball Super when we saw Vegito use it in the Goku Black Arc. The first time we actually saw it in canon, although not the first time it was ever used, as it was actually introduced in the games. Another rule is that I must stay on track with the actual story of Dragon Ball GT as much as I can. Meaning we will have the basic sagas of the Black Star Dragon Ball Saga, the Baby Saga, the Hellfighter 17 Saga, and the Shadow Dragon Saga. Other than that, I can get as creative as possible. I can introduce new characters, I can change how certain characters work, and I can basically do whatever I want, as long as I'm not implementing too many different characteristics that makes it too different from Dragon Ball GT. This will be a rewrite of the series, not a complete overhaul. As in, we are trying to make what we were given with Dragon Ball GT as good as we can possibly make it without making it something completely different. And now that we have all of that out of the way, let's get into the actual story of this what if. We would start off at the same place we left off in at the end of Z. Goku and Oob would be fighting in the World Martial Arts Tournament. Oob able to keep up with Goku's incredible power, and possibly even surpassing it. Goku, being far too interested, would decide to train this young child, and then the two would head off. Although one major change I would like to implement is that they would not be taking Goku completely out of his personal life for so many years, as he still would have a relationship with his family and friends, because he's not just willing to abandon all of them just because. That's complete character assassination, just like we saw with Goku becoming a bumbling idiot in Dragon Ball Super. And how we saw in Dragon Ball GT, he just abandoned his family. It doesn't feel right. So we are going to say that instead, Goku takes Oob to the Lookout, and trains him in the Room of Spirit and Time to teach him how to control all of his power for the first few years. That way, he can actually make sure Oob isn't a danger to anybody, and he can also make sure that Oob is able to harness his full potential. After they actually get out of the Room of Spirit and Time, Goku would go back to his family, enjoying family life and his personal life, until he actually has to go out and save the universe or whatever. He's not just going to abandon everything to go train with Oob, although he would still keep a relatively routine training schedule with Oob. They would be friends, they would be training partners, and the relationship would be rock solid. In fact, I believe, seeing as we never actually got anything introduced that Oob had a real family, maybe Goku decides to adopt Oob and bring him into his own home. That way, they don't have to leave home and abandon their families to go out and actually train and have this rock-solid relationship. Instead, they can become a part of each other's family, Oob becoming Goku's third son. So, now, everything would go basically the same as it did in Dragon Ball GT for the foreseeable future up until we get to the beginning of the Black Star Dragon Ball Saga, wherein Pilaf and his gang would be on the lookout, but not in the same way you might suspect. They wouldn't just stumble on to a new set of Dragon Balls that was far more powerful and far more dangerous than the original. No, that doesn't make sense. Why would anybody have this spare set of Dragon Balls just lying around, and if it was really that dangerous, why wouldn't it be heavily guarded? Instead, the Pilaf gang would find the final Dragon Ball they were looking for on the lookout, the 4-star ball. This was the final one they needed to actually be able to summon the original Shenron. And now, they would summon the dragon. They would realize that their age has caught up to them, and they actually don't have much of a chance to take over the world. They could wish for their youth, but they decide not to. Instead, they just really want to screw over Goku and the rest of the Z-Fighters for tormenting them for the rest of their lives. They would want to make sure they can actually get back at the Z-Fighters for ruining their plans all of those times. So, they would decide to get rid of their best weapon, the thing that was saving them every time they were in too big of a pickle. They would wish to get rid of the Dragon Balls. Shenron is shocked and scared by this wish, but he is forced to obey. The dragon would then have his eyes glow red as his body turns to a white light and he then disintegrates. Shenron is gone, and the Dragon Balls would scatter around the entire universe as they begin to dissolve themselves. Kami, or in this case Dende, would die off as well, aging acceleratingly quickly before then turning to little more than ash. The Z-Fighters would sense all of this going on, and they would arrive on the lookout to see the Pilaf gang shocked and scared as well. They don't know what they just did, but they would feel earthquakes around the planet. King Kai would tell them that something incredibly bad is going on, and Popo would verify this. The Earth wasn't like many other worlds. It wasn't held together by the forces of nature, gravity, and other sorts of forces. No, instead, it was held together by the guardian of the planet. Someone who was holding it together and making sure it didn't erupt and the world didn't crumble to its knees. Volcanoes would begin to erupt, earthquakes would begin to happen, mountains would crumble to dust. In 1 year's time, the entire Earth would be gone. What they need to do to stop this would be gathering the Dragon Balls and placing them together to then get a new Guardian to be able to be appointed and fix the world. Now they could just go and get another Namekian, but that wouldn't solve the Dragon Ball problem. They can't just magic up another set. The set that was just used is still active and still tearing itself apart. If they don't go get those Dragon Balls and bring them back to the lookout with a new Guardian to try and fix them, then the world is doomed. And this is how we get into the Black Star Dragon Ball Saga. The last thing any of them had seen with the Dragon Balls was the red stars on them turning to pitch black. Here, however, the team to go rescue the Dragon Balls and bring them back to Earth would not actually be Kid Goku, Pan, and Trunks. The first change that Goku here isn't a kid. This series isn't going to be made to try and recapture the glory that was original Dragon Ball. Instead, it's a continuation from where we left off in Z. So Goku never became a kid. But that's not the biggest change to the team, believe it or not. Instead, it's that the two members that were on the team are replaced with 3 different people: Piccolo, Oob, and Gohan. Now, I could say that Vegeta actually goes with everyone else to go and try and gather the Dragon Balls, but I feel like Vegeta would instead want to stay on Earth rather than leaving. He would want to protect his family and save as many lives as possible from the disasters going on the planet. And the group that actually goes out into space wouldn't be going on a happy-go-lucky adventure, as it's not like they have a year to go out and gather the Dragon Balls, and if they fail, oopsie daisies, the Earth is destroyed, Instead, they have to live with the fact that every moment they waste, more lives are being lost. So they would be focused solely on gathering the Dragon Balls as fast as possible and would take it with utmost seriousness. Although they weren't actually able to make a Dragon Ball radar, because the signals that the Dragon Balls were giving off were extremely distorted. Instead, they were only able to get a vague location on where each Dragon Ball was. The ship that they would be using to travel from planet to planet would have a built-in gravity chamber. That way they could train while they are out adventuring, going from planet to planet in search of the Dragon Balls. Gohan would have come along only because he wants to make sure his family is safe no matter what. And Goku would insist, saying that he is one of the strongest people the Earth has, so it would only make sense for him to come along. And since he can't really continue to work since the world is in jeopardy, he would decide to tag along on the adventure. They would find the first Dragon Ball on planet Namek. Surprisingly, one of the balls had actually been drawn to the positive energy of the Dragon Balls on Namek. But they would find something pretty disturbing from the Dragon Ball that had landed on this planet. Somehow, the Dragon Balls were actually beginning to take hold of the Namekian people, corrupting them and turning them into negative energy-based slaves, only being used to cause destruction and chaos in their wake. Once the gang arrives, they would assume that they'd be greeted by the peaceful Namekians like they had multiple other times, but instead, they would see only the warrior Namekians, whose power has increased exponentially, and they are attempting to kill each and every one of the visitors. They don't know what's going on or how this happened, but they're trying not to kill any of the Namekians while still defending themselves. They would think that maybe they could use the Namekian Dragon Balls to actually wish these corrupted Dragon Balls back to Earth, but very quickly they would find out that the regular Dragon Balls that were on Namek are gone as well. But not because they were also corrupted, but instead they were turned to stone. All of the Dragon Clan Namekians had been absorbed by their warrior counterparts in an attempt to gain greater power. And it worked. Each of the Namekians there had become so incredibly strong that they were even able to rival the Super Saiyans. Gohan would go into his ultimate form and Goku would go into his perfected Super Saiyan 3 state to try and fight the Namekians off. But then, Piccolo would have an idea. He might have a way to actually take in the entire Namekian planet and make sure that their legacy is not brought down to blood-hungry, power-craving monsters. Piccolo will absorb every other Namekian. That way, once this is all over, he might actually be able to release them and find a way to save his planet and his people. Then Goku and Gohan would begin to help him out, holding down each Namekian. That way, Piccolo can absorb them one by one. Eventually, Piccolo is strong enough to where he doesn't need their help to actually hold them down and absorb them. He can just do it on command. By the end of the day, every single Namekian was brought into Piccolo's being, and now all that's left is to find the Dragon Ball. But while they are looking around, they would find something horrible. Instead of having actually absorbed every Namekian, they only got half. The other half of the planet was absorbed into a separate being, someone known as Lord Slug. He had actually been able to survive this and was created out of the pure malice from every single Namekian corrupted by the Dragon Ball. And now, after absorbing half of his people, he would begin to fight on par with Piccolo. But not because that Lord Slug was actually as strong as Piccolo base to base without having absorbed any other Namekians, but instead because he was able to unlock his own potential. And now the two of them are fighting on par. Goku and Gohan would go to step in and possibly stop this entire thing right now, but Piccolo would say no. This is his fight. He has to be able to prove that he is the Super Namekian that will be able to save their species. The other two should just go and look for the Dragon Ball while Piccolo handles this. And then Piccolo will give a knowing smirk as well as a reassuring thumbs up, as Goku and Gohan would reciprocate and then go look for the Dragon Ball. Eventually they would find it, and they would see Piccolo standing on top of Lord Slug. Piccolo would have his hand outstretched, and he would apologize to the monster, saying that he's sorry that all of this had happened, and that he wasn't able to better protect their people. The inner Kami inside of them would say that he regrets ever leaving this planet, and maybe if he didn't, he would have actually been able to save all of them and prevent all of this from happening. After all, this was Kami's problem, as he was the one who created the Earth Dragon Balls that got them into this mess. But then, Lord Slug, somehow breaking through the hatred, would say that he forgives Kami, and to just absorb him now. And then, Piccolo would do just that, absorbing Lord Slug into himself, now becoming equal with the rest of the group, to a certain extent. He would be on even playing fields with Ultimate Gohan, but he's still a little bit weaker than Oob and Super Saiyan 3 Goku. So he's definitely come a long way in terms of power, but he still isn't the top dog. Although, this is certainly impressive, and his training will be much more effective now. And then, as the Saiyans continue to go along their way through the universe, they would find another Dragon Ball, or at least the planet where it was located. Some low-life, not really too inhabited planet. Somewhere that we're going to call Vampa. It holds the same purpose as Vampa did in Dragon Ball Super, and although it isn't the same place, it might as well be. We're not taking Dragon Ball Super's Broly note for note, but we are introducing the same Saiyan, as he was still technically something that existed in the Dragon Ball universe prior to Super. He was just canonized, or maybe there's a better word to use there, but I think that works, in Dragon Ball Super, meaning that he is now canon, yet we can't use that same Broly. Nevertheless, they would arrive on the planet and sense a familiar yet somewhat distant power. It was Broly. It was the key of another Saiyan, but not one they recognized. They would find Paragus and Broly on the planet, wasting away. The two of them had been training this entire time and getting stronger in hopes that someone would arrive on the planet and they could bum rush them to take their ship. But here, Paragus was too weak to even do anything, and Broly was too naive to even know what the plan was. Paragus tried his best to teach Broly, but he wasn't really able to do more than teach him how to do basic maths and know how to speak very little in terms of English. The point is that Paragus is on his deathbed, and Broly is a little more than a monster with power that he doesn't know how to control. Now, seeing other people on the planet, Paragus would tell him, now is his time to escape. Go and kill these four, and he will be able to leave. Finally being able to do what his father wanted to do for so long. And then, shedding a tear, Broly would realize Paragus is now passed on, and now all that's left is to go kill those four and finally escape this wretch of a planet. Then, Broly would find the four of them and tell them that they're not going to leave here. As Broly would then power up into his legendary Super Saiyan form, blessed with divine rage, as he would see the four of them after just having lost his father. He would be angry beyond belief, and now he's going to use all of that rage on these four intruders to his domicile. Broly would attack the four of them, and he is even boosted by the power of the negative energy of the Dragon Balls, and their malice is also controlling him as well. The four of them, Piccolo, Goku, Gohan, and Oob, would try and defend themselves, but Broly isn't giving them a chance to power up. Then they would actually take a brief moment, Goku being the first to transform into Super Saiyan 3, as Oob was able to defend him long enough to give Goku the chance. Then Gohan would be the next, transforming into Ultimate, with Piccolo, who doesn't need a transformation, being able to do the same thing that Oob did for Goku. Oob and Piccolo would then power up, glowing an aura around them as their power would surge, and they would begin to try and fight Broly alongside the two Saiyans. Then, after a few minutes, Broly is only getting stronger and stronger, while the rest of the group is losing stamina fast, having not prepared to actually fight right away. Then they would try and break through their limits to maybe gain some new power, but they just can't do it. Broly is far too powerful, and they just can't find a way to actually overcome his rapid growth, as well as incredible power. But then, Gohan would tell the rest of them to back up, as he might have a plan. Then, powering up, as his hair would begin to glow golden with the same ultimate aura rushing around him, as he would now awaken into Super Saiyan alongside his ultimate form. But even past that, he would go into Super Saiyan 2 on top as well, as he already had perfect mastery of Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2 by this point. Now, Gohan is incredibly powerful, the strongest of the group by far. And then he would actually be able to put up a decent fight against Broly. And somehow, they would actually be able to survive, or so they might think, as Broly would be launched into space by a father-son Kamehameha, Goku bursting through his limits to try and lend assistance to his son. Now with Broly out of the planet's orbit, they think they're out clear, and they don't have to fight the monster anymore, but then Broly would just be even angrier. And then the Rogue Saiyan would launch a Omega Blaster straight at the group, and Gohan would stand front and center to try and defend everyone else. But then, Piccolo would take that iconic stance he had in the Saiyan Saga to defend Gohan once again, unleashing all of his Super Namekian power to actually take the blast head first. He wouldn't be dead, but he would be incredibly injured. And this is where Gohan pushes past his limits once again, as he would then launch another Kamehameha, but instead, it's wrapped around with the power of a yellow beam, a Masenko, a Masang Kamehameha, which would eviscerate Broly. Gohan would rush to his master's side, but Piccolo would say that his regeneration that he gained from absorbing all of those Namekians will be able to keep him alive from the charred body that he was given from Broly's attack. He's going to be alright. Gohan is overjoyed and would decide to stand by his master's side, while the other two of them, Goku and Oob, go in search of the second Dragon Ball, and they'd be able to find it with relative ease, as the planet wasn't too large and there wasn't a ton of actually enclosed terrain for them to have to break through. Instead, it was mostly open land, and the Dragon Ball was standing in plain sight. The crew would then board their ship, leaving the planet in search of the other Dragon Balls. In fact, they would find another Dragon Ball on the radar right away. Actually, it's more than one. It's so much energy, it might actually be all 5. The team begins to think they lucked out, as they think they might have just found all 5 of the Dragon Balls in one place. They would look around a bit more and eventually stumble upon the planet. They would arrive and they would see an insanely technologically advanced place. In fact, it's probably the most technologically advanced planet in the entire cosmos. They would find that the Dragon Balls, or at least what they think is the Dragon Balls, are all in one singular place. Some incredibly tall and luxurious looking palace. They would enter the courtyard of the palace and approach the front gates as some strange looking, almost humanoid man would approach them. Although it doesn't exactly look like a human as much as it does some sort of an elf. Although not exactly an elf, more like an elf-like Saiyan. It's weird, they can't exactly put their finger on it, but if Vegeta was here, he might actually recognize this person, or at least they think he would. The point is that they would enter the palace and be accompanied by this elf-like person, who would explain the culture of their people and everything about them, knowing that eventually some random civilization that had actually gained access to space travel would land on their planet eventually, as they were bound to pop up on some radar at some point. Little did this person know that he was absolutely correct. Or maybe he did know. They don't exactly know a whole lot about this person or their culture, and even the explanation they were given seems a bit strange. It was vague, but it was still descriptive. After talking to the king of their people, they would find out that what they were looking for had actually landed on their planet. 5 of what they're looking for. This excites the group, as they might actually be able to save their planet with as little casualties as possible. And then they would ask for their Dragon Balls to be returned, and the king would bring them down to the laboratory where they were being kept and studied. The scientist in charge of the project would look at the 2 Saiyans, 1 Majin, and Namekian, and describe each of their races with adept knowledge on each. The group has no idea how he gained this knowledge, especially of Oob, who really shouldn't have much known about his race at all. But then the scientist would begin to cackle maniacally. He had been studying the power of the Dragon Balls, but he had been doing so much more than that. He had been learning about their power and how it worked, and he was siphoning it off into himself, as he would then demonstrate his vast knowledge of everything that had ever existed up to that point and even beyond, as well as incredible power that he had been able to actually gather from absorbing the devious magic. But then the scientist would laugh further, striking down their king and declaring himself the new ruler of this planet. The group would be surprised and shocked and ask what's going on, but then the scientist would say that he's strong enough to take all of them out. He already knows about their forms and their strength, and they're not enough. But then Oob would get enraged. He's done with this. He's done being left out. Everyone else has these cool forms, these special techniques, these incredible power boosts, and now this person is saying he knows about his people, he knows about who he is, but he's not telling him. Instead, he wants to kill him? How dare he? Who does he think he is? Then Oob would power up a Kamehameha and launch it point blank into the scientist, killing him once and for all, with a sudden surge of power that Goku had never seen in the boy. He doesn't know what this is, but he's afraid the Dragon Balls might have actually corrupted Oob at least a little bit. This anger isn't something much like Oob. In fact, Goku tried to draw out the boy's anger, but it was so difficult. Every time he tried, it just didn't really work. He was able to, but not to great effect. But this guy, he was able to do it. Goku is afraid, but the day's saved, and they might actually be able to reverse the effects of these Dragon Balls once they actually save the Earth. So they would grab the 5 Dragon Balls and bring them back to Earth. But little did they know, something was brewing in the scientist's lab. He wasn't the only person gathering the power off of these Dragon Balls. This was something even more sinister. Something that had been growing in this lab ever since the days of the Saiyans. In fact, this race was even more connected to the Saiyans than the group had first thought. These were the Tuffles, a race that had once shared the planet of the Saiyans, and now they were going to avenge their race. This machine, this bio-android, was going to kill off all of the Saiyans and avenge its former masters. Now, they were going to finally get the revenge they oh so deserved. And this revenge would be enacted by the bio-android known as Baby. Tune in next time to see the Baby Saga of Dragon Ball GT. I hope you enjoyed watching this, as I certainly enjoyed making it, and if you could, please like the video, subscribe to the page, and hit the notification bell. That way you're notified whenever I release any new videos. That would be very much appreciated. This is, always has been, and always will be the Irishman. Talk to you later. Bye.